Okay, it's 5:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item is approval of the agenda.
I move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, all in favor? Okay, approval of the May 30th minutes.
Just one correction. It says Dr. Rachel Christie made the motion to hold. Sorry, no. Just one.
Okay, so I need to make a motion to accept with noted change. Okay,
So moved.
Second.
anybody?
Moved it, she
Did you
seconded.
move? I'm sorry.
She
Did you
seconded.
I second.
Okay. All in favor? Public comments, no one's here. There's a list accumulating of board actions that need to be codified in policy. That's what I want to start off with this evening. Because they are, because they're not changes to existing policies, I'm going to ask that we vote on each one, okay? The first one was passed, I believe, at the April work session, and it was that no school shall be operated, let me pull it up here. Bear with me. All right, we'll go back to that one. We had at last meeting that all communications between the State Department of Education and the superintendent would be sent to the board as a matter of course. Okay.
That's in addition to the agenda.
I'm sorry?
Are you adding that to the agenda?
Adding what to the agenda?
What you're doing now?
Continuation of policy review. That's if you feel more comfortable doing it next week, when we can specify it, but to me it falls under policy review of new or existing policies, but whatever you two want.
Motion, can you vote it? I mean, can you vote for adjustment to, we already approved it, right? I don't matter.
Just the
I think-
eviction.
I think it's fine.
Huh?
I think it's fine as long as, it's verbatim from whatever was in the meetings,
Okay.
so I know how.
All right, in order to keep it clean, though, I'll take Mel's suggestion and we'll put that off to next week. So, on the next agenda for next week, please schedule new policies first before existing policies.
Or maybe we
Okay.
should say,
Huh?
codifying, should we identify it that way so that,
No, I have a couple
Or you
of
have some of the
other
new
suggestions
ones?
that
Okay.
have come in from people.
so maybe both of that then,
Yeah.
new and codification?
Yeah, suggestions that have come in from committees.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Mr. Don, I think you were making reference to.
Speak up a little,
I think
please.
you were making reference to I remember Mr. Strimminger had made a motion about the board had exclusive authority to operate or not operate any public school.
Right,
But anyway, that was what you were talking about, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I thought
but
so.
we're gonna
Okay.
hold off on that till
Yeah.
next
So
week.
next,
I
okay.
think
I
you
just
already
wanted
did.
to,
We
yeah.
already did.
You already did that one. I think you already did
Yeah, I
that.
think
Put it
already-
in.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I
right.
think already did that one,
Okay.
time, but this
Yeah.
other one I had.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that means we start off tonight with 2.4.
2.4 is just to make sure that I picked up the changes.
Changes.
Is to make sure I picked up the changes that you wanted on here.
Yep. Okay.
And I think they left off, where it starts off, 8, board meeting agenda. It would be on page 4. So to make sure that, particularly with,
Oh, I'm lost here.
go to, policy 2.4.
2.4, yep.
Page 4, where it says board meeting agenda.
Oh, okay, yep. All right, so,
And everything in blue are the changes that, that I made. So from that point going forward, further,
all right.
part, you know.
So we pick up on, it looks like C. It was
Correct.
A, it was B, now it's C, all right? Yes, okay. Any board member may request a topic or matter to be included on a future board agenda if that matter falls under the purview, excuse me, under the purview of the board. This request should be made via email to the board offices and courtesy
Should be
copies
courtesy copy.
to the full board.
Courtesy.
Carbon copy.
Hmm?
I always thought it was carbon copy.
It used to be called carbon copy when
And then.
when carbon copies existed.
Kids don't know what carbon is.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's gotta be.
this is not the same, yeah.
Okay.
But since
I
it's
learned
being
something
done
new.
as a courtesy, we'll leave it at
Yeah.
courtesy
Physical
Courtesy, yeah.
description,
I
yeah.
didn't even know that. Thank you.
to the full board. Other board members who wish to indicate their support for discussion of the item should do so via email to the board offices. And we took out, should no other board members contact the board offices regarding the item, the offices will determine if the item is sufficient, that we took that out. Okay? The board offices will determine the appropriate board agenda for each matter, whether it be a board committee, board work session, or regular board meeting. If the request is a time-sensitive matter, it should be noted. The timing of the request combined with the appropriate venue for the topic and the length of time necessary to gather supporting information when necessary will determine when the item appears on a future agenda. Once that determination has been made, the officers will notify the board member of the plan for addressing the topic or matter requested. How does that play with you?
It looks correct now.
That's fine,
It looks correct
that's
now.
fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
Now, the normal content of the agenda. At a regularly called board meeting will be as follows. Call to order, executive session if necessary, approval of agenda, pledge of allegiance, statement of media notification, moment of reflection, points of celebration, public comments, chairman's report, committee's report, if there are any, superintendent's report, board business items, consent agenda announcements, public comments, and adjournment. Any, yes?
I think we usually do the pledge before we approve the agenda.
Hmm?
We usually do the pledge before we approve
Yeah,
the
you do.
agenda.
We do,
Yeah,
so I
that's
need to
true.
move the order. Yeah.
That's true, so we should
2, 3, and 4.
Invert.
That-
Switch.
Yeah.
make the pledge number 3 and the approval number 4.
Okay.
Okay? Good catch, David. Item F, can we annotate what section of the Freedom of Information Act describes what the South Carolina law for adding agenda items is? So that it's clear once and for all what's an emergency, or that at least that emergency is required,
That exigent circumstances.
or
that you're talking about?
emergency or exigent circumstances.
Still up for interpretation.
He could just reference the statute number. Okay, no, excuse me. No motions by presiding officer, the board chair or vice chair shall not generally make or second a motion during the meeting of the board. Should the vice chair pass it to another member now. Okay. So far, so good? Yep, okay. Consent agenda, any board member may move an item from consent agenda to board business prior to the board agenda being approved by the board. Once the board has approved the board agenda, moving an item from consent to board business must be made by motion, seconded, and approved by 2/3 majority. Okay. Everybody all right with that?
I have some notes that Wendy was checking on something for that. Oh, yeah. It was the, yeah. It was, I had EE right here for the
Okay,
emergency.
emergency or exigent circumstance. okay.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
from our February meeting. Was that clarified to jive up with? Moving item from consent to board business. That would be 10B. I had a note from our,
Yeah, I need to check on that.
What's open?
this is
That's the one John just got to read, right?
right, because I had my notes from the meeting that, when we first discussed this, it says approved by majority, but then I had a note here, it says 2/3 plus emergency and exigent circumstance. So I
And
don't,
approved by 2/3 majority in exigent circumstances.
I think we just have to check
Yeah,
that
I
to
think
see
that's right, but let me double check.
if this is
Okay.
correct.
Double check, okay. Okay, I got it.
Well, I don't,
Hang on.
I don't understand why the 2/3 is in there, to tell you the truth, since the chair has the authority to move things in and out of order. If you wanna keep it in there, that's fine with me, but I don't.
No, I just wanted to make sure it was double checked, because I had.
Yeah,
it
but
on the
it's
notes.
not to be confused with the 2/3 that's required to put something on the agenda that isn't there before.
That was something you all had me add, but I mean, could have misunderstood it in the conversation since we were going back and forth.
Yeah, I just had Wendy written here,
Yeah.
2/3 and plus the E. So I don't know if it's correctly written here or not. Correct, the way it's written right now.
We need to check B too. B,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
that's, I think so. Just to make sure it's
Yeah.
correct. And then we got rid of
So what does the FOIA Act say about the E&E, Wendy?
Yeah, I need to check that to make sure that we,
Oh, I thought you had it.
no, I write myself notes so that I know.
David,
You're just talking about moving something from consent to board business. So,
After the agenda.
yeah,
yeah, I'm not sure if you need the E&E, but go check.
Okay.
Right, because it's not like you're taking it off, you're just moving.
You're just moving it
consent.
around.
It's already, it's already there.
Toward
yeah.
visibility,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
toward
Yeah.
visibility.
Yeah, I
that's
don't know,
all.
I
So
don't
you-
even recall why I have these notes, but.
Cause we've moved
Because we
things
got
around
into a
before and not
conversation.
voted.
Hmm?
Huh?
I said we got into a discussion
About
about it, 'cause
that.
that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Let's just make sure it's clear.
but we can move it without 2/3.
Hmm?
I think we can move it without 2/3.
After the approval?
Yeah,
Yeah, my understanding was
Yeah.
once the agenda was approved, you needed 2/3. But
I think that's what the confusion was,
Right.
maybe, because it says, it originally said by majority of the board, it didn't have the 2/3 in there. And then now we've changed it to 2/3.
Okay, so you're gonna back it up one step and then ask the question is, when we approve the agenda, are we approving what's on the agenda or what's on the agenda and the order in which it's stated? That's all this is.
I think the confusion may also come from, this was originally titled, this section was originally titled removal from consent agenda. And then we changed it to just consent agenda too, so. Okay.
So,
Well,
okay, means that we can.
let's say that somebody arrives at the meeting a little late, okay? And had they been on time, they would have said, they would have had the automatic moving it from consent to board business, right? That's a non-debatable motion if we do it before the approval of the agenda, right?
Right.
So what makes it so that it requires a 2/3 majority of the board to move it from consent to board business once the agenda has been approved?
I don't know who came up with this rule. I mean, my mind, it don't make any sense at all. If you can do it before, a person still allowed to be doing it afterwards anyway. I mean, either you can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know where the 2/3.
Freedom of Information
Yeah,
Act
2/3
does
don't
not
mean anything.
reference at all the order of stuff.
Yeah, this
So do
is
I take it out?
Robert's rules thing.
Oh, great, good.
So it comes out?
So that's gone.
Thank you.
Actually, one more vote. I mean, what's the?
Anything else?
B is all gone?
Yes. No.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're gonna back up to A then.
Okay. Approved.
And one fix to A would be, any board member may move an item from consent agenda to board business, period, without saying when, okay? And that's with, if B is removed.
You have to.
Hmm?
Okay.
Now, there's the question. Can you move, an item without a vote before the agenda?
Consent,
for- yeah.
I know you can with consent.
Okay,
You
I
can move
mean,
anything
so,
with consent, that's a Robert's rules thing. You can move it off, any board member can move it off. But I don't
yeah,
know,
but that's probably why it's there then.
Hmm?
No, I mean, it's there because, you know, they're not allowing any member to move it if they come late. They come late, we have approved the agenda, you come late, you can't go back and move something then. Unless we all agree on it, at least to majority vote, because you could do it first earlier, without a majority vote, or can you?
right, any one member can move
Just-
it prior to the
right.
group.
Okay.
Anybody can move
Right, so, yeah. Gotta stay.
Hmm?
It's gotta stay in my mind.
Rachel,
Pardon?
what's your feeling on it?
No, I agree with Mel about,
About B, we're back on B.
right.
Yeah,
lea-
'cause if
leaving
you-
it, because
If you
if
leave
it's-
it A don't say anything about voting at all.
Right,
Okay, so you want it to stay?
I think it should stay
Okay.
in those instances.
That's 2 out of 3, that's fine.
Okay.
Moving right along.
Okay, let's see.
Board meeting minutes and materials. A is pretty self-explanatory. Excuse me. B, the board secretary shall ensure the board's executive assistant posts the following items on the BSC website as follows. Meeting material within 48 hours after the conclusion of any board meeting under normal circumstances. Video recordings no later than 48 hours after the conclusion under normal circumstances. And under normal circumstances, board and committee minutes will be posted within 48 hours of board approval. In no event shall such minutes be posted fewer than 10 days prior to the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Okay, so that leaves, if I'm reading it right, a wiggle room of 2 days or something. Okay, anybody got a problem with that? Okay.
And see,
Now,
the only changes went
this
back
is-
from shall, I changed, it was shall, we changed it to will, then it went back to shall. So that's the only thing that's changed, you see.
Which was that, you talking C?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why C is there. Yeah.
Instead of like E3,
D, I had a little confusion and I wanted you all to make sure that that is what you wanted it to say.
It's, to me, it's just a little wordy.
C, you talking C?
Huh?
Talking C?
Yeah, yeah. How about, couldn't we say, until minutes are approved, if they appear in anything, they'll appear with draft all over them? Rather than this,
I bet you they got that language from somewhere, though, that sounds like some legal speak right there.
how about minutes are in draft form until approved by the board, and when they are referenced or published prior to board approval, they will be noted as draft. I think that's what it's trying to say.
Yeah, I know that's what it's trying to say, but where it should say, should it say legally? Or should it
This
just say?
quotation at the bottom, I'm sure is some type of
Yeah, their draft form
legal
not been
jargon from
approved.
somewhere.
No, this was pulled out of some other policy book. Or some other.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that same disclaimer on
I've seen
other
that before,
districts' documents, so. The other stuff before it, though, that, we can condense that if we need to.
What are we to do? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, we can leave it in there, I think it's just clumsy, it's clumsy as all get out.
Right, saying a lot of nothing.
It's saying a lot to say a little.
So you want to shorten that first big long, or the first, it's only one sentence, huh? First two sentences,
Well, how about,
and start off after,
how about if we started at the draft minutes shall contain or be placed on a web page with language providing these minutes are in draft form, have not been approved by the board, and take everything prior to that off.
the quotation affect the legality of it, unless we know where the quotation came from?
What?
Will the quotation affect the legality of it unless we know where the quotation came from? You know what I mean? I mean,
That draft, okay, that quote does not appear in the Freedom of Information Act.
it does not.
No. Yes.
I think those quotes are indicating that this exact wording is what they want on there. I believe that's what the quotes are indicating. It has to be this exact
That phrase.
wording, fairly certain it came from a legal counsel, because it is wordy and cumbersome,
Yes,
so, and that
yes.
just reeks of legal.
And they haven't been
So I don't
approved
see
by the
any-
board yet, so they
I don't
could
see
be
any
modified.
harm in it. You know,
I mean,
You
they're
don't
not
see any
approved
harm
yet.
in having all of that, or you
What
don't
is
see any
the,
harm in
Robin, can you tell me?
just reading the
Or
last.
leaving it alone,
Maybe,
why take a risk?
Robin, can you explain, or maybe you have some background information on why it's got the 48 hours and the 10-day rules and all that kind of stuff in there? What is the importance of that?
48 hours is, the board's rule that they wanted, but then 48, the 10-day is saying that that's a FOIA rule, that it has to be up within the 10 days. But the 48 hours is who else rule.
Okay, so that 10 days it does need to stay then, and the 48 hours is mostly, I would assume, for us to be able to see them.
Now, the 10-day rules is the minutes had to be, there was some interpretation whether they were approved or draft. So it was stated that draft minutes needed to be up within 10 days of meeting.
I think we should probably leave it.
That's 3, yeah. Now, C is what we were talking about now. That's okay, I think. Leave it.
All right, we'll leave it. Moving right along, D, all materials distributed to the board during public session are open to the public unless exempt from disclosure by law. That's pretty straightforward and pretty true.
Yeah. I think it's fine.
All right.
Okay.
Voting method, the board will conduct votes on all motion. Excuse me. The board will conduct votes on all motions and resolutions by the employment of yes or no or abstention. No secret ballots will be used. That's works for me. Okay? All right. Board members voting on the prevailing side of an issue may move to reconsider an item at the same time, or I think they want to say next regularly scheduled meeting.
That's what they wanna say.
Yeah.
Should be the next
I
thing.
had next and then I took it out because it was scratched out.
It has to be for next meeting.
And there will be no representation by proxy of a board member at any time. That's wise, I think. Okay, electronic participation, we've discussed this a lot. Board members may participate in public meetings by electronic or other means of communication such as telephone or video teleconferencing, provided such participation is not disruptive to the proceedings. Participation includes all discussions and voting. So far, so good? Okay. Board members under such exceptional circumstances. Now, I would suggest that we take the exceptional circumstances line out of there because we have deleted it from A, and that's where it was referenced, okay? Board members,
That's, yes.
so why don't we have board members must provide reasonable notice of their intent to participate. Reasonable? So we take out under such exceptional circumstances.
Why does it say board chair, vice chair, or superintendent? I mean, it names two of the officers.
Well, it's not the superintendent's meeting, so I don't see why the
Yeah, it's
superintendent's
not confusing
referenced
why
in
those
that.
three
I
are
would
chosen.
say to,
Yeah.
why don't we say the board to one of the board
I
officers?
just say the board officers.
Yeah,
Because
to
then
board
God forbid, one not tell somebody or is absent, you know, I think three is like
Yeah.
good.
Okay, two. Their intent to participate electronically to the board officers. Okay,
What does time permitting mean?
pardon me?
Time permitting.
Well, he can't call up 10 minutes before the meeting and expect Robin to get it
Yeah,
all
but
set up and everything.
Can they call up 24 hours?
Reasonable time, do we need to define that?
I mean, that's what I mean.
Reasonable notice.
No.
Do you think it would be a good idea to say board officers and board secretary as well, since Robin is the one that runs all of that
Board
stuff.
executive assistant,
Executive assistant, yeah.
yeah, okay.
Um,
All right, now do we wanna fix a time
I think you,
to
I mean, or else
determine
you,
reasonable notice?
yeah, or else you run into that subjective, that flex that said she got it in on time, but she didn't.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask Robin, what do you consider reasonable notice to be able to fix it up?
Probably need 24 hours, so that
Yeah.
if we have to have county or somebody bring a phone to make sure that the phone works, or if the meeting is at some other place, we need to make sure that we have the electronic set up, to find out if it can accommodate.
devil's advocate position. I'm pretty sure that when we started talking about the electronic participation thing, we basically said that or it was discussed that we couldn't hinder or prohibit anybody from participating electronically, and if we add a timestamp on it, are we doing that? Say somebody gets the flu and it's within 20, or those
Yeah.
24-hour bugs or something,
Yeah.
but they still can participate from home, I don't know.
There's two circumstances under which
How do we
people,
make
How
that
would they be
happen?
used to?
I don't know.
there's two
Put a
circumstances.
cell phone up there with.
There's two circumstances under which people participate electronically. Either in a planned or an emergency. Planned, I could see 24 hours because you usually know 24 hours. Emergencies, you don't know when they come up. Okay, so what happens if at 11 o'clock in the morning of the meeting, there's an emergency? Are we gonna deny a person?
I'd say that, but you're probably right, but in today's world, you probably can get something to accommodate that pretty quickly. Not necessarily the method we've been using, but you probably can, like you say, your cell phone and the speaker there, and somebody we can have
It's not ideal.
a regular number here that you call in. Yeah, it's not ideal, but if you're saying up to the 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever time it takes a person basically to travel from home to here, you have a car accident or something like that, I want to be there, but something that's happened, can I call in? Yeah. Okay, let's leave it there.
I just worry about challenges to it. People.
Yeah, let's leave it and take the chance that the discretion of the officers will avoid challenge.
Well, yeah, I think time permitting is fine because I have every confidence that the executive assistant would make every effort to accommodate,
Yeah,
There'd be no
yeah.
reason not to.
Yeah.
So then board officers and board executives.
Or,
I'd err on the side of
And.
because then you have the three officers that are aware of the circumstance, and then the secretary who can immediately start executing.
okay.
Because Robin's doing all taking all the arrangements.
And hopefully she'll also alert the officers in some way, right?
Right. Members participating electronically otherwise must be able to simultaneously hear each other and speak to each other during the meeting and will be audible or otherwise discernible to the public in attendance at the meeting's location. Any member excuse me. Any member participating in such fashion will identify the persons present in the location from which the member is participating. No meeting will be conducted by electronic mail or any other form of communication that does not permit the public to hear all discussion. So if you're calling from Mabel's Tavern, you have to ask every patron what their name is so you can identify it. Everybody okay with that?
It's unenforceable.
Huh?
It's unenforceable, but I guess it's okay.
It's nice to say it.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully you'll be somewhere quiet by yourself.
It's
Yeah.
down just in
Here.
case you
Yeah.
find out proof that it wasn't done.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Well, then there's also the practical question of what's the location? I mean, if you're in a, well, there aren't any more phone booths, so you can't say that, but, if you're in a room and nobody else can, somebody at the other end cannot possibly hear what you're saying or what's being said to you, then they, for all intents and purposes, they're not there,
Right.
you know?
I
So,
agree with that, but then you're just saying, how do you know when it's, that opposite is the case and you can't prove that it is, you know?
okay. Electronic participation in board's executive session. Wendy, what have we learned about that?
We talked about it before.
Well, let's
We
talk
don't
about it
have-
again.
well,
There is no statute
Right,
prohibiting it,
that's
is that
true.
correct?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
that's true.
So, I guess legally then, noting that it's the responsibility of the board member to ensure security and confidentiality of their participation, there's no other reason to say that they cannot participate in executive session. Is that agreed?
But you'll just need to decide how, if this is only gonna be under exigent circumstances. I mean, I don't know about it being on a regular basis. Because we talked about this before, though there's not a statute, but the difficulty of being able to present everything to the person that's not physically present. So for example, there's something with numbers or whatever, I guess there'd be a way to get it ahead of time, or maybe we could do something by, I don't know, by Skype. Like Alice, she doesn't give you those documents till you're in there, right? I mean, you don't see
We don't
them,
in advance.
Well-
you get them when you're in there, so there have to be some way for
And
the.
collect it back. They
If
don't-
there's to, yeah, and there'd be some way for the board member to be able to see it, you
Right
know?
away.
To be able to view it, so they would feel like they had all the information needed.
And collect it back, because the information that's shared in executive session, Alice collects those folders back. So they're not taken,
Yeah. I think that the discussion in the executive session is probably more important to be able to make a decision than getting the handout.
But they would, but if I were a board member, I'd wanna make sure I had the right, I had all the information, so I
Looking
could make
at
an
the
informed
information.
decision, so that I was protecting my constituents as well.
Right.
But, how would you see it all? That's what I was.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, let me, all right, let me.
Robin's case is how do you get it, how do you retrieve
Like,
it
how do you
back?
get it to them, so they can feel included?
It's not optimum circumstances that you not have everything in front of you, but being able to participate in the discussion, if that's all you can get, then that's better than being barred from the discussion. Because ultimately, a person can participate electronically in the vote coming out of executive session, whether they're in the executive session or not. Correct?
But how could you vote if you weren't informed?
Yeah, see?
You have the right to vote, period. Okay?
But can you vote?
So-
if you made me informed?
So somebody does not have to, if they don't attend the executive session, they can still vote on any motion made in public after the executive session. So it's in the board's best interest to allow the maximum amount of information to that member as possible in order to make an informed decision. Vote because they're gonna get to vote anyway. So I think it behooves us to make it possible and not put roadblocks in the way. It'd be ideal if they could read it, but if not, they get to hear what's going on anyway.
I don't think you're putting the roadblocks in the way.
Speak up, please, Earl.
I don't think you're putting the roadblocks in the way, but you don't know who else is on the other side, other end of that line. And when you're discussing issues, especially personnel issues or contractual issues, you don't know who's on the other end of that line. That's,
David,
I would have a legal question. Does that second sentence absolve the board from liability for releasing contract information or anything else that's confidential? Because that has always been the problem, is that the board couldn't guarantee confidentiality if it was on the phone.
right.
But if we don't have any legal liability, if we eliminate our legal liability with the second sentence, then I think the purpose for putting it in there is gone.
Wendy, is it possible to find that out this week?
I could do my best, sir.
Okay,
Because,
all right, so let's
you
put
know,
that on hold.
bec-
So the
because-
question is, if someone phones into an executive session, right, and either intentionally or unintentionally allows a situation where someone who shouldn't hear what's going on does, is the whole board on the hook, or is that individual on the hook, or is nobody on the hook,
Does
right?
the
Is
sentence,
that-
yeah.
That's pretty much my question.
Yeah, and maybe the person that needs to sign a document saying that they're assuming all responsibility and that the board is released from anything, because I will tell you, this has come up where there is an action filed for libel, those intentional torts, libel or defamation and slander, and it's not covered. That person is not covered by insurance, and it's, those intentional torts, you don't have protection. I just don't want it, I wanna protect the board and make sure that, I don't ever want something released that's
That's
confidential.
correct.
I mean, I think about this, like, for example, and I can speak generally here, but when we're in executive session, when I have to give you all confidential legal advice, I'm gonna be telling you some things that under FERPA are protected by federal law, and it would be devastating if that information, it would be devastating to the family and the children, as well as, you know, to the teachers and to the people who are providing services. I wanna be really, I always wanna be really careful, because I wanna make sure that you all are protected from any liability. I don't want you dragged into some of these lawsuits I've been in.
Oh, I think everybody understands that.
No, it's just, you know, I feel like, I wanna be so careful that we don't ever breach confidentiality, because federal law takes over FOIA, okay? It does, I mean,
I don't see how we can be exonerated with that. Because how would you prove how that information leaked?
right?
Yeah, there's more stuff
Yeah,
leaked
you
out,
have to-
there's more stuff leaked by employees at Main Point than there is from this board. Trust
I
me.
know, but just the same,
By
if
employees.
we got,
Yeah,
we still get the ownership for that, don't we?
yeah.
Yeah.
If someone is accused of doing what I just outlined before, and say, all they gotta say is prove it. Prove that the information came from that person, you can't.
Right,
Huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
but
But
I
I think the
mean,
board,
is it the board responsibility because it was only discussed in executive session?
the board would be liable.
Yeah, that's what I'm
The
thinking
board
too.
would be liable.
Yeah.
I mean, we would be, what would happen is the board would be sued.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, they would.
The board would be
Board would be
sued,
sued.
the district would be sued,
Well,
the board members would be sued in their official and their individual capacity.
Right.
I would be shocked if we, the board, see information that is not seen by also the employees or the staff.
I wanna tell you.
Come on.
No, sir, Mr. Dowling.
So we're bound by confidentiality, but Oscar Homika, who's sitting at a desk and sees it, and then,
That is, I have
That's
mine,
the
I have it locked
territory.
up, but guess what else I have? I've got a machine in my office that you plug in, so you can't hear what I'm saying on the phone, because before, when I first got there, you could hear in the next office. Because I have to talk about things that are confidential, and oh, yes, sir, I have it locked up, sir.
and all of
Because
that is still
I
on
can't
the
take that
board.
risk.
I said, all of that's still on us, I mean, it's all on the board. Whether, I don't care who leaks it down line, I don't care.
I wanna
If it shouldn't have been leaked because it's executive session
If you wanna,
information,
personally, me,
then
I'm not, even if I was
somehow
in a room by myself.
we're gonna find out and get rid of that person who is
I would
leaking.
be comfortable with
Because
that.
it comes back
Like
to
I would
us.
give you legal advice.
Well,
Ain't no proof that somebody else leaked it.
Right.
so I think David's question is still the most relevant one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if we get an answer to that, I think we can decide, okay?
yeah, cause if we have to put in there that they have to sign something, then fine, if that absolves the entire board, great.
Yeah.
You know if there's lawsuit, well, then it's,
Fine, I know they'll sue everybody,
That's right.
but if the board could fall back on this sentence, that would be better than not falling back
but the
on
board
anything.
member, must release,
Yeah.
sign a release of all liability or something. otherwise.
If we could
Ensure
prove it.
confidentiality.
That's right.
That-
Okay, now, we move to,
Board conduct.
okay, we move to where, section 2?
Section 3.0.
We go to the black one, section 2. And you go to policy 3.4, well, you will skip policy 3.3, annual planning cycle. The planning cycle, that is the calendar that you all determine when the PEs are due. So that's what this is, that's what plan, 3.3 is.
So we need to talk about 3.3.
Why did we skip it? Oh, because of the results?
I think,
That-
yes, because of the,
All right, so we'll be able to fill that in with the results ad hoc committee. Has got the board, okay. I hope no one will hold it against me if I try to keep it up to an hour tonight.
I know you
Oh, you're all right. You
Die, yeah.
pass it, go.
I
Huh?
know.
Why are you pointing at me?
It's not just a one thing, it's just.
That's why.
are you gonna start with 3.4, or you wanna skip that, or are you gonna skip that one?
Okay. So, okay, we're through with the body?
You haven't, so are you ready to start with the next, you have to go on to the next one, so whichever one that you wanna start with.
Okay, what's the next one in the old list?
The next one will be policy 3.4.
Okay. So Norman,
Well, what happened?
The light went out.
Oh, the light went out.
I thought we were about to be in the board.
Board of Code of Conduct, we've already done that, haven't we? Right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
It's got changes to it.
yeah,
There's some changes.
we made changes to it.
Or maybe we didn't go through it all. I don't know. I've got some different sheets on it.
3.5 doesn't exist anymore, that was rescinded by the
3.4,
board
what do
last
you
year.
We didn't talk about it, I mean, it
Huh?
was,
3.4,
yeah,
you don't have any changes?
no.
Okay. So, and this red is actually from
The
the
red
first
is
reading.
from the.
Okay. So these must be my notes that I made when I was just
The
first
red
reading.
is
Man, how much red you got?
This is
I don't see
from-
one.
There's just one line,
One line,
and that's
yeah.
from that version.
Is it the school board or us?
Okay, so
That was the
3.4 we
change,
have
just,
not done
that was
yet.
from the rest of it, it's not accepted.
Oh, yeah, there was some language in another section that sounded a lot like the, okay.
It's just.
All right,
Yeah.
so, board member code of conduct. You know, Roman numeral 1, each member has the obligation to bring constituent issues or new initiatives to the board or to the superintendent, depending on whether the issue involves the board's role or the superintendent's role. However, each board member is obligated to act in the best interest of the school system as a whole. Anybody got any problems with that? Now, the message there is no ward politics.
Nobody's floating.
This obligation supersedes any conflicting loyalty a member may have to other individuals, entities, or interest groups. What does that mean? You know, can we define that? Or loyalty based on membership on other boards or in professional organizations?
I think A, B, C, D all needs to go. We're all bound by the ethics
They're all-
rules. It's,
Yeah, so A through D go, okay.
Through the,
The phrase, this obligation supersedes
Right.
should go out of
We might have
the
to
first
separate it
paragraph,
down by the
okay?
ethics act somewhere or something.
That's what I was thinking, is actually, I was gonna wait till we were done with this
Yeah.
and then add that in there, reference the ethics rules and
100%.
call it a day.
Alright. Roman numeral 2. Board members may not attempt to exercise individual authority over the organization. Instead, board members will refer complaints back into the system with notification of the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, and when speaking on behalf of the board, communicate only explicitly stated board decisions. That seems to be working pretty well,
Mm,
okay?
no, I have some concern, it's not. It is not. There are some board members, a couple of board members that are, instead of going through the chair, they're just going straight to staff member. That's something they should not be doing. And I'm gonna talk to the chair about that. Because
So you want all, you're suggesting that all complaints be routed through the chair to the
it
superintendent?
should go to the chair, to the superintendent, not, you know.
So you want to strike A then?
Well,
That's
that's a
A.
suggestion that Earl's making.
I'm talking,
Huh? Yeah.
so, because A says refer complaint back into the system with notification to the superintendent or the superintendent's designee.
Yeah, what is the system?
District, I suppose.
As opposed to system, I would propose administrative
Yes,
process. Yes, Dave?
I just remind you that the current interim superintendent was asked how he wanted these things done. And he said, just make sure I'm copied. He was specifically asked that. We asked him, how do you want communications of issues? And he said, you can send it to Tanya or you can send it to Robert, but make sure I'm CC'd. So, if you wanna handcuff him, you know, you'll do that by making stuff go through him. But some superintendents might not want that. And Herb is an example of a superintendent who doesn't want everything to go through him, he just wants to be aware. So I'd be careful with putting too many
Well,
restrictions on it.
I'm talking,
Right.
basically. what
As a
I'm talking
counter
about,
to, as a counter to that, I'd say, what do we want?
When you have
This
a
is
board
board
member,
policy, not superintendent policy.
when
So
you
what
have
do
a
we
bo-
want?
But you wanna know what the superintendent wants, it's his organization.
I would suggest submitting, having the chair vet all our questions and issues is a preposterous idea.
What I'm talking about is, when you have a board member, tell the staff, you work for me. We have only one employee. And that's, three, actually, three.
Yeah.
Three.
Yeah, superintendent. and-
No, none of those staff works for board members. And when a board member make that statement to a staff member, that you work for me and I'm in charge. That has to change, because you got a lot of staff members in that district office are upset, and it has to change.
Okay, in line with what David's saying, I think it's possible to say that all complaints back into the system, notification of the superintendent, and or the superintendent's designee. So when Herb said, yeah, right, Tanya, he was designating Tanya as a recipient of the complaint. So I think it was totally satisfied there, and I think it ought to be, it's just the way that it says is just fine.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is fine, and you ask the superintendent what he wants, he or she, and they
Yeah.
tell you what they want,
Yeah.
and you do what they want, because it's their organization.
And these are just for complaints now, not necessarily all the other communication with staff. Just, you know, I got a complaint, can you get this to the superintendent?
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would move that we leave Roman numeral 2 alone.
I think Roman numeral I think Roman numeral 3 needs to go in its entirety.
What? I'm
Or like,
kidding.
3,
The next one, yeah,
it's a hot mess.
build trust among members.
Okay, 3, to build trust among members and to ensure an environment conducive to effective governance.
That's just too subjective.
Board members
The
will
entire thing.
focus on issues rather than personalities. Yeah. Respect decisions of the full board. Can we define respect for a moment? What does that mean?
Gotcha.
I think when board, when a majority of the board vote for something, they vote. And I vote against it. I'm not gonna get out there in the street and criticize it. That's what I think it's talking about,
Okay.
basically. And we have had that in the past.
Yeah, you know.
I would agree with you, Earl, if we were not elected officials from electoral constituency districts, okay? Our allegiance is not to each other. Our allegiance is to the constituents in our district, and so if the majority of the board makes a decision, we have every right, in fact, I think a duty, to communicate how we felt about it to our constituents, because we're elected officials. We're an assembly of elected officials who come together. You can't liken a school board to a bridge club or a homeowners association or any non-governmental body that is made up of non-elected members. That's my take on it. David?
I'll just point out, these policies have been in effect for a long time, they've never worked.
They what?
They've never worked.
Right.
They've never had any effect.
Because no
It's
one
so
follows them,
subjective.
nobody
Right.
follows them.
There's-
extremely
And I
subjective.
realize they were made as like guidelines, but
They were made to make the board a little bit more
They don't work.
effective and particularly in the perception of the public. And, I agree with you that we represent a certain constituency, and that's not always a good thing, because we divide ourselves in terms of what we need to get done overall for the students.